mallet. Got the new mallet. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 6, 2023 Mendocino Historic Review Board. My name is Ian Roth. I'm the chair. And we're calling this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. now that we've overcome some of our technical difficulties. I will say last time we were here live, I was talking to Director Crog, was 3 years ago. So it was probably the February meeting just before March of 2020 when everything broke out. So we have a couple of us who were here last in person. We got 3 new board members who were the first, so they're all looking just like, what does this look like? So welcome. A couple things in protocol real quickly should you roll call first? Can you do that? Or?
Call to order and then we'll call the
Okay. Real quickly, we do appreciate audience participation. If you do so, please do in the appropriate time slot. We have time for public expression. If you want to speak, please approach the podium over here and talk on the lectern. State your name first so we can add it on for the record. And thank you all for coming. So, Planner Cherry, can you please conduct roll call?
Sure. Board Member Kepler,
Present.
Board Member Saunders,
Present.
Board Member Alm,
Here.
Board Member Marticle, here, and Board Member Roth.
Present.
Thank you.
And can you tell us who staff is joining us?
Oh yes, this evening we have the director, Julia Krog, myself, Julianne Cherry, Mark Kleiser, and then presenting is Stephen Schweitzer and Ian Crowley.
Thank you much. Did we have proper notice for establishing this meeting?
Proper notice is established.
Great. And before we get into the approval of minutes real quickly, just for those who didn't join us, we actually opened this meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon on Main Street for our first item, public hearing. And we went through and visited all 5 public sites for this meeting's agenda, so just want to let you know. So we're actually reopening the meeting. So that brings us to our first agenda item number 4, approval of minutes. Those are September 22 meeting minutes. Any corrections, questions? Paul, please.
Yeah, under item, I guess it's under present, item 2, present. I noticed that Ellen Saunders is missing from the list, and I think that needs to be added. Also, under 12A, review board discussion, the word, this is in the 1, 2, 3, 5th line, the word preview should be purview. P-U-R-V-I-E-W. That's it for me.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions, issues? And I believe that, you also sent some corrections to staff?
Pardon?
Did you send additional corrections to staff?
I did, yes.
So they should be in the record. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll motion to approve.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Roll call, please.
All right, so a motion by Saunders and seconded by Kepler to approve the September meeting minutes with corrections. Your vote, Board Member Roth.
Aye.
Board Member Madrigal.
Yeah.
Board Member Alm.
Yes.
Board Member Saunders.
Aye.
And Board Member Kepler.
Aye.
So the minutes with corrections passed unanimously.
Thank you. November 22nd meeting minutes. Any corrections, amendments?
Yes.
Secretary Hall?
This is, yeah, this is item 10B, and I would like to have a new last sentence, or replace a sentence that's the last sentence under discussion and action, and I would like it to read, the memorandum asking the Board of Supervisors to look into Mendocino County participation in the Mills Act program was approved unanimously by a show of hands and was to be signed by Ian Roth as chair. And I think I submitted that also to the staff.
Do you have that on record? Okay. Any other corrections, modifications? Motion to approve?
I'll move the approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think it was Board Member Saunders who caught the first verbal. Roll call, please.
Sure, so a motion by Madrigal and seconded by Saunders to approve the November meeting minutes with an addition to item 10B. Board Member Roth, what did you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Holmes?
Yes.
Board Member Kapler?
Aye.
Board Member Saunders?
Aye.
And Board Member Madrigal? Aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. And our last meeting minutes would be those from December 2022. Any corrections? Modifications?
Yeah, I have some here.
So staff would like to point out that amended minutes were
Yes.
emailed out on Friday. Do you need us to go over the meeting amendments, the minute amendments, or did you all receive them?
We've all received,
All right.
said they were also posted on the website.
Right, so we're asking for corrections to those amended minutes.
To the amended draft minutes. All
I think I've got the, oh, yeah. I think this would be at the bottom of page 4, item 11A, in the section entitled Presenters. I want to make sure that we clearly identify the numbered conditions of approval and that we don't confuse the conditions in the original staff report with the conditions in the staff memo of December 5th. So I would recommend that the word recommended be inserted in the second line before conditions of approval, and that the phrase of the original staff report be inserted after number 6 of that line. So have you got that? Okay, because I didn't send that to you. All right. That's it for me.
Anyone else? I just want to throw in, I think we have a little bit of a numbering issue on page 5. I have 11D for case, signature, and there are 12 matters from the board, 12 matters from the staff, and 12 adjournment.
Okay.
So we'll update those, that'd be great. Anyone for motion on approving the minutes as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second? Right. Once again, roll call, please.
So we have a motion by Kapler to adopt the amended minutes with further amendments, seconded by Madrigal. Board Member Roth, what is your vote?
Aye.
Board Member Saunders?
Aye.
Board Member Ong?
Yes.
Board Member Madrigal? Yes. And Board Member Kapler? All right, so that passes 5-0.
Thank you. All minutes approved. Thank you for giving us that speed. Agenda item number 5, correspondence. Have we received any correspondence for items not on the present agenda?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I actually did receive one, and I'll pass it on to you. I'll read it out loud. It's from Bill Zimmer, and he sent it to me. He wanted me to read this in for the record. I understand that the review board is going to review the continued use of tents by restaurants in the town. I believe tents erected during the emergency should be terminated now that it is largely behind us for 2 reasons. They are in no aesthetic way historic, and the continued use means more water usage for humans, leaving less water available for fire suppression in a rapidly more dangerous wildfire world. Thank you, Bill Zimmer. So I was not on the comment that was not on the agenda, so pass that down. That brings us to number 6, report from the chair. Again, welcome back to in-person meetings. This has been 3 years since we've done this, so it's nice seeing everyone again. There are refreshments on the back table. Please eat cookies, drink the coffee. I don't want to bring it back. So get rid of that, would you? Enjoy. And I think that another thing that, on a more serious note, I would like to see can get a report back from code enforcement. Their last scheduled meeting was not attended, so now we're going out 6 months, so we'd like to get those at least quarterly.
If I may,
Yeah.
this morning I received a draft report for the March meeting from code enforcement, so I anticipate that we'll have one for the March meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I have. So it takes us to agenda item number 7, public expression. So the review board welcomes participation. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and not more than 10 minutes for a subsequent agenda item so that everyone may be heard. Public expression items are limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the review board that are not on today's meeting agenda and items that were not previously considered by the review board. So, do we have any requests for public expression? Rick? Please state your name for the record.
My name is Rick Sachs. Good evening, and it's nice to be back. I want to bring up a subject that has come up and not really worked in the past, and requesting the board to resolve some issues regarding copy changes on signs. And I would like to see the board resolve that and the director of planning adopting some law on that. A situation that has come up that seems to be a contradiction, and maybe somebody can uncontradict it for me, but part of what the board many years ago decided was that when they approve a sign, they're looking at the location, how it relates to the architecture, the surroundings, the colors, and they approve it. And it has been policy for the last 35 years that a copy change is no big deal, that I'd be able to go in and apply for a copy change on an approved sign, and it was an over-the-counter thing right now, and there was no charge for it, and as long as it was the same size, same location, same orientation and colors, you're just changing the copy. Now it's getting to a place where it gets very complicated, and not only taking a long time and not being an over-the-counter thing, but it can easily go for months. And some of what I see in the code here is there's one place where it says a copy change can only be done on a sign with a valid permit. And then there's another place where it says when a business ceases, then their sign permit is no longer valid. So that when a business leaves, the new business coming in that has always been able to get a copy change is being told, no, you can't get a copy change on this because you don't own that sign. It's that business, that sign is no longer valid. The permit is no longer valid because the business isn't existing anymore. So that says that it's the only one that can do a copy change is if I owned a business with a legal sign and I wanted to change the name of the business myself. Doesn't work. So what I'm asking for is your help here. I'd like to see some reasonable decision made on that. And I'd like to I'm requesting that you put it on the agenda for discussion and resolve this one as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else for public expression on a non-agenda item? There we go. Mr. Grimes?
Kelly Grimes, advantage of having Director Krog here, because I have a bit of an issue with the fact that we come here, we get approval, let's say, for our project, we get a permit, and then during construction, as Ishwi will tell you, there changes happen. You know, the window that we thought we were gonna get didn't get ordered, it's too small, it's too big. You know, window got shifted 6 inches to the left or 12 inches to the right. Changes happen in construction. And apparently there is no way that we can ever come back here without paying new fees and getting a new MHRD permit. Because once we walk away from here, we have a permit and there's an appeal process, and apparently there's no way to amend an MHRD permit. And I think it needs to change. So I encourage changing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public expression? Okay. Thank you for sharing with us. Item number 8, consent calendar. I believe there are no items. So that brings us to our regular calendar. So, public hearing, we have none of them this evening. Again, I would appreciate your assistance in maintaining composure and order through our discussion so that it can give information both to the public and to the applicant. So we're going to open up with case MHRD 2022-0008, Main Street, Mendocino, continued from December. And this is a request from Mendocino Historical Review Board permit to replace the water tower staircase with a new enclosed staircase structure, reroute an existing wooden pathway, and construct a wooden ramp for access to an existing raised deck. Note the site is listed as Category 4B Non-Historic Resource in Appendix 1 of the Mendocino Tower Plan, Deli and Restaurant. The project is located at 45040 Main Street. Do we have Liam here? Would you like to present that to us? Thank you.
Thanks. This is Liam Crowley, staff planner for this project. As mentioned, the applicant has amended their request in response to a discussion at the meeting from December 5th, from which this item was continued. The revised plans are included in the current agenda packet that you should have in front of you. There are also copies over on that table. So the revised features, materials, and colors are also included in the submitted plans and are detailed in the staff report. I did want to note that I received information from the agent that they chose Essex Green as the proposed color for window and door trim, and that's Essex Green by Benjamin Moore. I do have I have a little swatch if you'd like me to pass that around. I only have one on me. There's one posted up there as well, but that'll be the color. So, just kind of to elaborate a little bit more. Staff did contact the Kelly House Museum, who provided additional historical information regarding the tower beyond what was presented at the last meeting. That should be included in your packets as well, along with some webpage photos that were provided by other property owners. And then additionally, there was, at the December 5th meeting, there was a question from the review board as to whether the board has authority to deny a request to demolish a structure or something similar. And so I just wanted to bring up a section of the code in response to that. So County Code Section 20.760.030. This is demolition within historical zone A requires review board approval unless it is otherwise exempt by Section 20.760.040. And that, a direct quote says, demolition or removal of any structure of a value over $100 or having square footage area over 120 square feet. I did receive several public comments via email. I can read some of those read all of those into the record if you'd like. I did just want to briefly touch on the additional historical information I received from the Kelly House, and then I'll be available for any questions. So, according to the Kelly House, this is in attachment E. The water tower was originally constructed on the Mendoza Store property in 1904. Then in 1923, a windmill was removed from the tower and a larger water tank was installed. In 1975, the water tower was approved by MHRB to be removed from the Mendoza property. And in 1976, the water tower was rebuilt on the Main Street property. It was constructed in the same design and most of the original beams were used in the construction. Some of the beams could not be used due to rot, and the reconstructed tower was 6 feet shorter than the original. So I believe that's all I have for now. Like I said, I'm available for any questions, and if you'd like, I can read in the public comments to the record.
Yes, would you please?
Okay.
Actually, you know what, can I ask you to hold off on that?
Sure.
Let's have the applicant make his presentation, and then we'll go to the correspondence, which is, ask you at that point to read those in. Thank you. Mr. Grimes?
All right. Early comments. Thank you all for being here. Kind of nice to see you in person.
I just want to say, what's even better than that is seeing all of you guys in person. I don't know if you know this, but for the 3 years that we were remote on Zoom, we had no idea who was out there, who you guys were. We had no information on it. So this is so nice to have a full house again. So
So nice. How many of you were around when the Mendoza's hardware came before the review board? I think it's a very similar situation. All right. So I think we have a very similar situation here in the sense that we have a non-historic building that has a ton of emotional attachment to the town. And so I think that last time on Zoom, unfortunately, no one really showed up from the public, but you know, you guys had a lot of good comments, and I think that we went away from that and we responded to your comments, and we tried to change our building and adapt to reflect some of the characteristics of the tower that everyone seems to be sad about losing. But I would like to point out one thing that Liam kind of glossed over in his history. In 1975, the water tower was deemed unsafe, and owners Alvin Mendoza and Raymond Standoff received permission from the MHRB to take it down and install a ground-level steel tank. Okay, that was in 1975. So you're going to hear tonight that in 1975, that tower was taken across town and reassembled here. And so it's the same tower. But I don't quite comprehend how it was deemed unsafe at Mendoza's, and the same historic tower was then re-erected over here. So there have to be some changes. Liam noticed that, you know, it's 6 feet shorter. I don't know how many of the beams were actually replaced with different ones, how many of the brackets were thrown out. So the building that we're talking about here is a non-historic structure. It's shown non-historic in the inventory. I mean, there's nothing else. You know, if we're here to argue whether it's historic or not historic, then we're wasting our time, because I think we're supposed to go by the inventory, and it's deemed a non-historic building or non-historic structure. On the inventory, just down the page, is the Kelly House water tower. The Kelly House water tower is a Category 1 structure. So it's not like water towers were overlooked in the inventory. They weren't. There were certain water towers that are historic. This water tower just happens not to be historic. I also looked in the inventory to see if Mendoza's, you know, back at the beginning had a water tower that was historic. There is no water tower listed in the inventory for any properties up by Mendoza's. So, you know, from my perspective as an architect, I look at this project as though this is a non-historic water tower. And so with that in mind, we have moved forward and tried to come up with a, you know, replacement that's going to get people to the restaurant on the second floor, and it's going to be, it's gonna fit in with the town, with the historic town. So if you notice, we, redesigned the building before we kind of went off the box, the building that it's attached to. This time we tried to pick up on certain water tower elements. The walls slope in. We've got a tank up on the top. We've got guardrails around the top. It's inaccessible, but it still has the look. We have a little deck off the second floor so people can, while they're waiting to get their table at the restaurant, can go out on the deck, have a fantastic view of the ocean. So I think that we've captured many of the elements. Obviously, we haven't captured the intricacy and the beauty of a timber framed water tower. But then again, to maintain a timber framed water tower is asking a lot. And, if it is historic, and if the process of moving it from Mendoza to here, keeps it historic, then, it's great that all these town folk are here. Maybe we could show of hands who wants to take it for the next 50 years. Because we could dismantle it, and we could move it to your house. Or we could dismantle it and move it to Rotary Park. I'm not saying we need to dismantle this and toss it in the dump, because it does have, character defining elements in it. It's something that's reflective in the town. But to ask one particular owner in town to maintain the last remaining water tower that's got a water tank on top, I think is a little bit overreaching. So, all I heard today at the site visit was that we can't take down this water tower. So we kind of been a little defensive about the historical nature of the water tower. But I think that our replacement is, I think it's a well thought out and creative solution. So, thank you.
Thank you. So, putting the correspondence we have, Fire Crowley delivering a moment, do we have any other correspondence or telephone calls besides that?
Are you asking, are there members of the public who would like to give it?
No, not yet, this is just the stuff we've done before. We'll declare open in a few moments.
I don't believe I or the planner has received any emails directly.
Okay. Planner Crowley, can you please introduce the written comments and read them in the record?
I apologize if some of these may be duplicative if you're present right now.
Actually, I have a vacancy, I don't need to rewrite
Okay. First one I received was, this is from Christina Aranguren. Sorry if I mispronounced that. It says, MHRB 2022-0008. Ms. Cherry, PBS staff, MHRB members, thank you for your considerable attention to the proposed water tower project and accompanying staff report. While highly supportive of the historic preservation of the community, I am not convinced with the concept of a faux water tank as proposed. It would benefit both the property and the community if the tank could be redesigned and utilized to store water, i.e. a rainwater catchment cistern. Private water storage is something the Mendocino City Community Services District is actively encouraging. Thought I had the rest earlier. One moment. Next is from Kathleen Cameron. Greetings, the Kelly House Museum has a research website, and when I entered the keyword water tower, 555 results were found. Why so many? Because water towers were extremely important in sustaining the town of Mendocino with their unique water system. Nearly every developed property had one, including Mendoza's grocery store. Unfortunately, only a few remain today, but water towers are certainly a well-established feature of the town's character. The loss of historic structures due to demolition lowers the historical authenticity of the town, diminishes the bank of resources that put Mendocino on the National Register of Historic Places. Archival photographs can never replace the real thing. Hopefully, you will not permit the structure, which dates back to 1904, to be destroyed and replaced with a squatty faux water tower that adds bulk and mass to the adjacent building. Please remember that your primary function is to preserve the architecture and character of the historic district of the town of Mendocino. Thank you for your volunteer service, Kathleen Stanley. And the next one is from Lee Edmondson. To the MHRB and PBS staff, I'll begin by complimenting staff for compiling an enlightening, clear narrative in their staff report on the proposed project. I see staff was assisted by staff at Kelly House in assembling the history, and my kudos to everyone involved. Thank you. There is one factual error which needs correcting. Project description, page 1, misrepresents the full facts of this matter when it states the site is listed as a Category 4B non-historic resource in Appendix 1 of the Mendocino Town Plan, Deli and Restaurant. This characterization is mistaken for what the Historic House Inventory of July 24, 1979 describes as the building housing the deli and restaurant, not the adjacent water tower. This allusion subtly distorts the historic significance of the historic water tower, which has been made clear in the historic narrative in the staff report entitled Mendoza Store Water Tower. Therein we learn this historic structure was built in 1904, which makes it almost 120 years old. The structure was modified twice, once in 1923, 100 years ago, and again in 1975, when it was dismantled and relocated to its current location with only minor modifications. Jim Coop, who owned the building at this time, is quoted saying the relocated water tower was 98% original. So we are not tonight considering what the staff report mischaracterizes as a Category 4B non-historic resource. We are considering the demolition of a Category 1 landmark structure. Quote, construction dated, history substantiated, only minor alterations in character with the original architecture, unquote. There is nothing in the staff report indicating the current landmark structure is failing or unsound. There are other remedies available to the applicant to address the accessibility issues regarding the second floor, which would not impinge upon the integrity of this existing landmark structure. There is therefore no rationale for approving the demolition of this Category 1 landmark historic structure. And then the last comment I have, to whom it may concern, the iconic water tower at 45040 Main Street in Mendocino represents a good part of the history of the town of Mendocino. Many water towers were demolished and destroyed prior to the Mendocino Historic District becoming designated as protected. The water tower, which Jim Coop painstakingly built as a replica in 1975 to replace the historic water tower that was there in the beginning, represents a good part of the history of Mendocino. It was built with old timbers, the same as many of the original water towers. The new design in which the water tower is encased does not provide the same characteristics and charm of the current Mendocino water tower. There are no timbers. The box design is far from the original water tower. It is a surprise. It is a surprise the MHRB board would even consider it a change. In my opinion, accordingly, this project should not be approved. Thank you, Deirdre Lamb, Mendocino town resident and former MHRB board member. And that's all the correspondence.
Thank you, Senator Crowley. All right, here's why I ask for your patience and organization, please. All the comments, we're going to declare the public hearing open in a minute. Comments should be brought towards us, towards me, the chair. We're not going to enter into a back and forth dialogue. So you have 3 minutes. Official statement, we recommend participation in the meetings. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please use the podium. Please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to address their comments to the meeting chair. The staff will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining.
3 minutes.
Is that ready? Good. Who would like to begin? I saw a hand up in the back. Please.
Hi, I'm John Semenich. I just wanted to point out that in the Mendocino Town Building Code under section 20.760.100, there's a duty to maintain all buildings and structures of historic significance in the Mendocino Historical Preservation District shall be preserved against decay, deterioration, and structural defects. It shall be the responsibility of the owner or other persons having legal possession and control of such buildings and structures to ensure there is reasonable care, maintenance, and upkeep appropriate for the preservation, protection, enhancement, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and perpetuation consistent with the intent of this chapter. And the fact that, this water tower originally was at the Mendoza store, it was a Category 1 water tower, and it's been moved, and I don't think that changes the category of the building. As has been pointed out before, the owner said it's 98% original. So I think the owner has the responsibility to maintain the structure and shouldn't be taking it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Sack?
Rick Sachs. The Kelly House has a guest speaker through the winter every month. And one month, the guest speaker was Barry Cusick. And Barry Cusick told a wonderful story of the history of that tower and how he was the one that bought it and moved it to that location, and tells the story of meeting the old man that originally built it. And those tapes are available, the CDs, the DVDs of it at the Kelly House, if anybody wants to see that history.
Thank you.
You have it, it's a great way. Thanks for bringing it back.
Do you know?
Hi, I'm Deirdre Lamb. I was on the Historical Review Board for 6 years. I actually printed out some information that, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but to refer to. So I only printed out 10 copies, so they each get one of those and one of those. As long as the board gets one of each. Okay, so under the Mendocino Historic Review Board Design Guidelines of 1987, on page 11, when I was at the site visit earlier, the applicant said that it needed a lot of maintenance. So I want to refer you to page 11 in this handout that has the historic guidelines. Demolition by neglect. Failure of a property owner to reasonably maintain any structure against deterioration may not be construed as sufficient grounds for a demolition permit and new construction. The primary purpose of this historic district is preservation of historic structures. And note, it says structures. It doesn't say a building. Okay, so then if you go to the next 2 pages, I won't read all of it because you probably read through this on your own, but the general principles for rehabilitation, restoration, and renovation of existing historic structures, which have been adapted from the standards for rehabilitation by the U.S. Secretary of the Interior. On the paragraph number 2, the distinguishing original qualities or character of a building, structure, or a site and its environment should not be destroyed. The removal or alteration of any historical material or distinctive architectural features should be avoided when possible. All buildings, structures, and sites should be recognized as products of their own time. Altercations that have no historic basis and which seek to create an earlier appearance should be discouraged. Changes which may have taken place in the course of time are evidence of the history and development of a building, structure, or site and its environment. And if you can read on that this water tower was built in, as was read in the letter that Planner Crowley read, was built in 1904.
10 seconds remaining.
10 seconds? Okay, so let's skip to, okay, so, all right, so in the next handout, the chapter 20.760, and section 2.0.760.072, item 3, where the approved work consists of alteration or demolition of an existing structure, that such work will unnecessarily damage or destroy a structure of historical, architectural, or cultural significance. That water tower is part of our skyline. You've seen skylines of New York, of Seattle. Mendocino has its own skyline, and that water tower is clearly visible in the skyline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Judy Steele, and I have been shepherding along this property in Mendocino for some time, along with the original owner, Lois Jean Raymond, and husband Bob. And I want to say first, to counter what some people have said, the previous speaker, we have not neglected, nor do we intend to neglect the water tower's maintenance to let it rot and then create even more of a liability or a safety issue. I want you to know that I've been associated with this business for about 20 years now, and I have watched the unbelievable amount of care and money and resources that have gone into maintaining this building and the water tower. It is a huge expense, and once you get to the point of, okay, these beams are huge, they might need to be replaced, then you're looking at altering the structure and you bring in a lot of other issues. It is very dicey. I want you to know, I want you to just ask yourselves, all of you, what on earth could be our motivation here? That is a really important question to me. Why would we want to spend all this money? And it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be an onerous task so that we can put up a structure. We're not going to put a B&B in it. We're not going to have tables out there. We're going to have an accessible space with a safe structure. I want you to know that I have been appalled by the kind of careless, like, we need to keep this non-historic skyline, this cultural artifact, when, what if we had a 7.8 earthquake in this town? We haven't had that in a long time. And I worry about what would happen to a lot of our structures because we are so darn concerned about keeping them just perfect to the site. But this is an access way to a restaurant, and it's got a very large superstructure above it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Mr. Rollins?
Thank you.
My name is Matt O'Halloran. I'm a facilities manager for the water tower for the Main Street LLC. It's a great structure. It was built in Mendoza's, dismantled, brought to this new site, almost as if you were creating Disneyland or some sort of fun thing that looked like all the other water towers in town. None of the wood is treated. It has a considerable amount of dry rot. I'm hoping you approve the new plan that has a lift. So we are not denying people with ADA needs to use the restaurant. That's a big thing. I think this is an incredible improvement. Barry Cusick bought it for $1 from the Mendozas, dismantled it, cut off the tops and the bottoms of the beams, lowered the height of the water tower. It's been fun. We've had a good run. It's been great. But now, currently, it's time to go for a change. I think it's a healthy change. I like the plan. I've worked on the water tower for 20 years. You don't need to know about all that, but we've done a lot of maintenance. And that's my take. I hope you approve the plan, right or wrong, and make a safe access to the restaurant. Thanks.
Thank you. I see a hand out in the back.
My name is Simone Casias, and I think the Historical Review Board should live up to its name and purpose and reject the proposal to tear down the water tower. It's considered a landmark by tourists and residents alike, and we should live up to the purpose of the Historical Board and especially reject the idea of an elevator in our historical town. That's it.
Thank you. The man in the very back, on the right.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Sinich, and I just wanted to remind what came up in Lee Edmondson's letter. Perhaps the 4B designation refers to the Flow Cafe and not the historic water mill. It's important that the people who live in the town, as opposed to out-of-town, out-of-village residents, we walk by this every day. This is a part of our culture. It's important to us as opposed to someone who is looking at it as an investment. I appreciate your input and I appreciate you helping to preserve historic Mendocino. There's only one of us. There's only a few water towers. They're not making any more.
I am also a steward of one of the water towers right in the neighborhood. It has been altered since it was original. It was an open water tower that was timber framed like that and then enclosed at some point in history. I'm a big believer in adaptive reuse of property where you can change the use, it should be fluid. However, I think that even though the designation is not, like category 1, it seems like it's got a lot of history regardless. And I think that altering the water tower could be very useful, and having access for people that have disabilities is good. It seems like some of the fabric of the tower, which doesn't seem to be a tower in the new drawings, it's a little bit lower. I think the height of it, I think, is really significant in what, like as Deirdre just spoke about, like the skyline. So I think like using some of the materials and adapting that the building to be able to facilitate the use that the owners want, but also keeping some of the fabric of this building and kind of would be better plan maybe. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's have the first piece before we do the second. Yes, sir.
My name is John Kavanaugh, and I felt compelled to speak tonight because the loss of any water tower is a hit to our historic community. And I understand that the maintenance and repair of these landmarks can be a challenge. I don't know the bureaucracy behind categorizations, but I do know it's a 114-year-old water tower that's been sitting on this site for about half a century. So it feels historic to me. So I guess, well, and also I just want to acknowledge that each water tower that currently stands is a testament to someone's devotion to their ongoing existence. Ideally, it would be great if the board could persuade the owners to keep it. I don't know how the site visit went. Like, can the lift be incorporated into the actual building that it serves? And I do agree with the comments on
the current plan. It seems a bit squat for what it's trying to replace. And also, you know, there's sliding glass windows, which are modern elements. There's a full paneled patio door. So if there is something, I'd ask the board that they make sure it doesn't incorporate modern elements and that windows and doors are more keeping in the nature of the historic design vocabulary of the town. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Lamb?
Point of order, she gets 3 minutes, that's it.
Yeah, 3
She's had
minutes.
her 3 minutes.
3 minutes wasn't very long.
She's had her 3 minutes, point of order.
So, there was 2 points that I didn't make that, at the site visit, we asked the applicant if the structure of the water tower had any engineering problems, and the applicant, Mr. Grimes, said that they had not had any structural engineer. And then,
It's
one of the,
This is rude. She's already had her 3 minutes, she can't keep talking.
Mr. Grimes?
She can't keep talking.
I was just making
I'm
2
sorry,
quick points.
but
She cannot keep talking, point of order. Learn how to run a meeting. Jesus.
would you like to remain here with us?
Not really.
You're welcome to leave.
Thank you.
Just one more quick point, at the site visit, the applicant was asked if there was any pressure that to have the water tower made into an 80 compliant unit, and there has been no correspondence with them regarding any formal pressure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other unique, not yet spoken comments? Hearing none, I will close that section of this meeting.
Can the applicant respond to the public comments? There was a lot of misinformation put out there. It's not a category 1. It doesn't matter who says it. We haven't seen.
Mr. Grimes?
What? I can respond. I'm the applicant.
Because this is the point where the public hearing's been closed.
I'm not the public. I'm the applicant. I'm responding to false comments.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. I'm responding to false comments that were made during public expression.
Okay, I think you've been to these meetings before.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know how it works.
I don't think
So it comes back to the board, and the board has discussions, and if the board has questions of the applicant, they may choose to ask the applicant questions. Any more outbursts, I will ask you to leave. Thank you. So, at this point, we bring it back to the board, where we can ask questions of staff, applicant, or the public. Who would like to start?
All right, I'll start. I'm very sensitive to the needs of the applicant. Maintaining a water tower that is not sided in and waterproof to the weather is extremely difficult. It wasn't so bad in 1975 or earlier when there was access to plentiful old growth redwood that would stand for 100 years. That's no longer available to us. It's not something that we should be cutting down. It's not something we should be using. So to maintain a structure of this style at this point, you're either limited to using old growth cedar cut from the Canadian forests or pressure treated lumber, basically, which is horrible to look at and toxic. So I completely understand the need to enclose this water tower. What I would like to see is a water tower built enclosed, like drawn, but that has the same proportions and reflects the historical nature of this tower. What I think I'm seeing here is a tower with a larger footprint, and the height of this tower makes it so that the way it's drawn, the interconnecting roof line the gable is actually, the peak of the gable is above the top of the upper story deck. That's going to create a very strange condition that I don't think has been thought all the way through. Also on the original water tower and all the other water towers in town, the upper observation deck cantilevers past the posts at the four corners and gives you that water tower type look. We don't have that cantilever drawn here, so the observation deck is getting a very squat, flat roof type of look. I think a really good compromise can be made by going ahead and using the proportions of the existing tower, siding it in, and I definitely think that allowing a lift for ADA is a great idea, and that should be adopted. Those are my thoughts.
I'd like to ask the applicant, I guess Kelly, to answer the question.
Mr. Kelly, would you like to address the podium, please?
My question is basically, why is it not possible to repair the existing water tower and staircase and to either incorporate a lift within it or a freestanding lift behind it?
Lifts are filled with electronics and stuff like that, you need to have them, protected from the elements. So I don't see how you're gonna put a lift in an open water tower and protect it. It's gonna last for 5 years, and then you'll have to replace it with a new one after it rusts out, keep replacing it.
You could sheathe the lift somehow?
I'll give you a pencil and you can go up with some ideas. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to preserve this water tower and put a lift in it, make it empty. I mean, history's got a point that we could take this, or what someone said, we could enclose this whole water tower and make it taller. But, short of that, you can't put a lift inside of an open structure like that and expect it to last.
John, you could enclose this water tower, then the beamwork might still be visible from the inside, so that there would be a nod to the historical work for people who went in. And then from the exterior, we'd see something like a lot of the other towers around town that have horizontal siding.
If this was a category 1 structure, I would totally applaud that. But this is a non-historic category 4B. I don't care what the evidence says or what anyone believes. What it says in the book that we're supposed to go by, this is a non-historic structure. It was deemed unsafe in 1975 by the same review board that you guys are on. So how can 50 years later it not be unsafe?
Obviously, if it was on the inside structure, you would add structural elements to make it safe. You'd probably sheet it with plywood on the exterior to give it sheer. Beams would become more or less aesthetic value to the inside. You would have an exoskeleton that created a structure to the modern code.
All right, but is there another non-historic category 4B building in town that anyone's gone to that extent to preserve?
I don't know, but I'm just saying that seems like something that could happen with this structure.
I think it was Mr. Saunders.
Sorry.
I'm going to take home, you have your question. I guess you've done. Do you have any other comments to add?
If we're, I'm happy to comment on this because I must say that I've considered this for 2 meetings now, and I'm still opposed to the proposal. I think that water towers are absolutely an iconic feature of Mendocino, and I don't believe we should remove them. This water tower was removed from Mendoza's in 1976 to its current location on Main Street, and the original apparently dates back to 1904. It has been part of the Mendocino streetscape for almost 50 years, and I just can't agree to remove it. we have a right, the review board has a right to deny an application based on section 2760-65 of the county code if we find that the proposed work will unnecessarily damage or destroy a structure of historical, architectural, or cultural significance. In my view, tearing down a water tower that is over 100 years old and has been part of Main Street for almost 50 years will unnecessarily destroy a structure of historical and architectural significance. And I think there seems to be quite an argument about how historic this water tower is, but I take note of the comments from, I think it was Lee Edmondson, about the historic nature of this water tower. And so I can't accept this idea.
Thank you.
I'll go next, fine. So, I guess my question is why now? I haven't really heard a convincing argument that says that it is a safety hazard. Mr. Bryan said it was unsafe in 1975, but it was moved and rebuilt. So I'm assuming was rebuilt in a safe way. And I think our responsibility is to look at the whole town and try and make it historic, whether this is in the list or not. We have a responsibility to look at the nature of the town generally. I didn't hear anybody address, is there another alternative for the lift? Could that be done inside the building, for example, or somewhere else? And as I understand it, there is no driving need legally to put the lift in the building unless it's touched. So once you touch the building, you have to make it ADA compatible. You don't have to do it if you don't touch the building. So I'm with home. I don't think this is finished yet. I would not approve this at this point, unless something else comes up that changes my mind in the next 10 minutes.
I don't know if I have that ability to, not by that oratory. So I was the one who had asked staff what our ability is to require something to stay. I mean, it was commented in the last meeting, and I appreciate the input today, but the applicants have already gone through, I mean, I shudder to think about having any of us having to design a building by committee in a group. We gave suggestions last time, and those have been incorporated. What I don't think has been stated this time was that, like the 3-story look that looks so nice was cost prohibitive for the applicant. I think the applicant would love to have a, basically frame in, or have the existing thing frame in the building. So I really have a lot of, I have compassion for the applicant in the sense that I appreciate we don't want anything to change, but change does happen. Like, this structure will be decaying. We cannot stop the beams from decaying. So I did have some questions about this board kind of forcing liability, frankly, forcing liability on the property owner. I love the water tower. I mean, I love to keep them all, and there's so few of them. But there is actually a water tower shape being done on new construction right now in Mendocino Village. That has, I think, the profile that this board would support. I don't know. This is a tough one because I think there's the ideal, ideally we would get to keep it how it is with an elevator inside of it. But I don't know if that can be done with the slim 3-story profile that there is. So that's what I'm struggling with, is how to maintain the character of water towers in Mendocino with a very real desire to maintain structures. I mean, physically maintaining these structures.
Thank you.
So I don't have a position yet.
That's fine. That's easy to me.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
So we had the letter from Barry about building it. This is in the packet. Okay, so in the packet, there's the notes from here. It's in the historical section where they give us information about it. This could never be done now. I mean, it's so fascinating to read. I love this, that he bought it for $1. He didn't want it to go, you know, I wish that, yeah, someone could buy this from $1 and, you know, run a line over the side where he almost dies because he's lowering, he tried to save the tank. But it was rotten from the inside. So it's really, it's a heroic effort to get it where it was, but it sounds like it was quite challenging, and I do not think we would have been able to do this now, obviously. But I appreciated that being in there. I mean,
May I make a quick comment on what Paul just said?
Please.
There is clearly a duty to maintain, as Ms. Lamb indicated, it's part of our design guidelines. And I understand that, you know, it's expensive to maintain homes. I have an old home in this town, and I've piled a lot of money into it. Why not? But we haven't really heard any evidence or any indication of the extent to which this water tower is needs to be replaced at this point. How much of it needs to be replaced? Is it one beam? Is it more than 50% of the water tower that needs to be replaced? We haven't heard any statements to that effect. You know, when you look at it now, it seems fairly solid to me. I'm sure parts of it need to be replaced, but there's no indication of the extent to which this water tower is in such a state of disrepair that it needs to be completely replaced. So that's another reason why I can't agree to having it torn down.
Thank you. All right, yes, it's my turn. I'm in a little bit of a conundrum here, and that is the original water tower was built in 1904 at Mendocino's place. I was just trying to figure out what year the building itself was built in one on Main Street, and I wasn't able to quickly look at this because it's just, I always say that I never form an opinion until I get to the meeting. I've seen the site, I've heard everything, and then things start to congeal, and they really have. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, before the water tower was there was, before 1976, that two-story building existed, and it worked without the water tower. So I'm trying to understand, my logic is, how is this water tower somehow linked to this building as one unit? They're two separate entities in my mind. You've got a water tower that's iconic, it's part of the village, they are few and far between now, but why that has to be sacrificed for the benefit of this other structure, I don't understand that linkage. What seems logical to me is there are two separate entities owned by one person, or one property. That if you need to create access to the second floor of the building where the restaurant is now, that should be contained within that structure, somehow within the floor plan of the bottom story giving access to the second story. Might be a little bit of loss of floor space, but why this water tower should suffer because we need to get people to the second floor of the building next to it, I can't get to that. The water tower is iconic. I greet a lot of visitors in town because of my occupation here. And I can, with a straight face, look at each of my guests and say, when was the last time you visited Mendocino? And it doesn't matter what the response is. I say it doesn't matter, it hasn't changed. And that's why people keep coming back here. And that's because there's an historic review board, because people who live in this town love this town and they want to see it not never change, but they want to keep the beauty and the historic aspects of what it is. taking down this water tower would be like cutting off a finger or two. I don't quite get it. I really like the fact, thank you, Deidre, for bringing this back to mind. Page 11 of this, which does say, like it or not, duty to maintain. If you own it, you gotta maintain it, and that's what it is. And, you know, it's part of, if I go out and I'm interested in investing in property and look at the whole property, I'm gonna figure out, do I really want this or not? And there's obviously things that you don't see from day one, but if you got an original water tower as part of your property, then you're buying into it, and that's what it is. So I do want to see the ability for people who have limited access to get to the second floor to enjoy the view, to enjoy the restaurant, whatever use that has. But I can't link that as the tower is its responsibility to provide that access. So that's what I see. Any other comments?
I just want to throw my idea out again one more time, because I think it's a reasonable compromise, considering that duty to maintain, that's great in theory, but when the materials that you need to maintain are no longer available or are prohibitively expensive, we have to adapt. I mean, we can't cling to our historical ideas so strongly. We drive around in cars, we have hot running water, we're not living in the late 1800s. So I think we have to allow things to adapt, and I think if the applicant wants to come back with a proportioned, historically detailed water tower that's enclosed, I think it would look great. I think it would serve the purposes of the applicant, and I think it would keep the skyline of our town. It would look great. I don't see any problem with that. What we've gotten back so far from the applicant, unfortunately, is not something that looks like a historical tower. So I would propose that as a compromise for the board, and to give this applicant a way forward, because I don't think just standing up and saying you have to maintain this timber frame structure is a very reasonable stance.
So we're not going to go back.
I'll say one more thing why it's not. It's not reasonable because the materials that went into building that tower are no longer readily available. And it is irresponsible as a town. I think the same thing about requiring wooden windows. We're requiring wooden windows. My firm builds a lot of wooden windows. We use old growth redwood and old growth cedar to do it. It's irresponsible to be cutting down old growth trees to build windows and towers. We need to adapt away from the necessity to use old growth wood.
Okay. So we have three options as a board. We can either deny, we can approve, or we can continue. At the December meeting, against that, one of the applicant's representatives wishes we voted to continue. We have a second design. So that second design is what's on the table now. So we have the same three options as before. We can approve, we can deny, or we continue to hope for a different design solution.
Can we ask the applicant what he would like at this point?
Sure.
Kelly, at this point in time, I'm going to ask you, would you like the board to give you direction to come back with another design? Or would you like to deny the thing? Because you have three members already ready to do it.
Just for the edification of the public, who haven't been here before, and approval, obviously approval, continuous goes on to the next meeting, and then denial affords the applicant to appeal that with a fee to the Board of Supervisors. Sir?
I'd just like to point out that I believe that technically you cannot continue an item unless the applicant agrees to have it continued. Correct me if I'm wrong, we have the director here, but I believe that it is not one of your options unless you give our permission to continue it. You cannot just continue it without our permission.
So I guess that's the question.
Well, you have our permission this time, but check it out.
The question is, would you want the continuance, or you're not going to get approval of
I understand, we'll take the continuance, but I don't like the fact that you think that it's one of your three choices. It's not, unless you get our permission. And I'd like that.
We'll clarify that.
Thank
You don't
you.
have to do this moment. Thank you. So, the applicant said that they prefer to be continued than denied. It's time for motion.
I'll make a motion to deny this proposal.
Okay.
And I would second that on the basis that I'm not convinced that it needs to be done now. I mean, I haven't really seen a compelling reason for doing it right this instant. I mean, a year from now, if things falling apart, I'm kind of leaning toward where the street is at this point. I've not seen a compelling reason to do it right now.
So is that a second?
That's a second to that, yes, sorry.
There's a motion on the table.
I just want to clarify,
What?
I just want to clarify that that would require the applicant to do all the feasibility. I just want to,
understand.
okay.
So,
All right.
Roll call,
We have a motion to deny the application and a second by Saunders. What is your vote, Rob?
aye.
Your vote, board member McAvoy?
No.
No? And board member,
No.
board member Saunders?
Aye.
Board member Kapler?
Aye.
The motion to deny is approved 3-2.
Can I just make one comment that you're now forcing us to go appeal over the board, so you've lost all control over what happens to your town. I just want to make that point. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break right now. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for allowing me to discuss. Okay. Agenda item 90, regular calendar, case MHRD 2022-010, Noah Shepherd. This is an after-the-fact Mendocino for review or permit requesting to install 3 electric vehicle charging stations at McCallum House Suites, 10691 College Drive. And we have a firefighter.
Good evening, Mark Kleiser, Plan 2, plan for this project. As stated, this is an after-the-fact permit.
Can I ask a quick question? Sure. Is there 2 for this item?
There's 2 different, there's the,
And what is the,
one's on pallet in the cottages,
Oh,
and
okay,
one's
okay.
down
Thank
on
you.
the office.
thank you.
This is the one on Howell Drive.
Okay.
Yes. So it's an after-the-fact Mendocino historical depot permit to install 3 electrical vehicle charging stations enclosed in wooden cabinets at Howell Drive. The applicant has installed these. They are concealed in redwood slat cabinets located off-street parking at the McCallum House Suites. Per the design guidelines, rubber fences made of wood and installations, electrical such as this one, should effectively be screened from public views. This is the case. I'd like to point out a memo that was sent to the review board earlier today. Condition of approval number 7 incorrectly stated that the charging cabinets should be stained. That is not the case. These are unstained redwood and they match the fence that they are attached to. No comments of concern were received, and that concludes my staff report. Available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? Okay. Mr. Shepherd, as the applicant, would you like to add to that?
Well, for the charging stations on Ballot Drive, they were already approved once and installed. I questioned the building department about it because the reason that I'm back before the board is that they were never final. They were approved and installed, but I never got a final on the building permit, so that's why I'm back before you. I kind of questioned the staff about whether I should have to go through the historical review board again and have to pay for another permit, or whether the fact that I just didn't get a final made me have to do this again. But here I am. I question whether that's the correct procedure or not. But anyway, it's already been approved before, so it's installed. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Do do we have any, Mr. Stack, do we have any correspondence or telephone calls we received related to this item? Nope. Okay. At this point, we're going to open the public hearing item. Public hearing part of this review board welcomes participation in meetings. If you'd like to speak on this matter, please use the podium. Please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to address their comments to the meeting chair. The staff will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
I just want to make a comment that I think it's very commendable of Mr. Shepherd to be installing these forward-thinking electric stations, and I think that it was done in a tasteful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none. We're going to bring this back to the board. Any board members wishing to ask questions of the applicant or staff? Any comments? Only look like you're
I guess-
on.
Yeah, I guess, it bothers me that we've approved this some years ago. I think I was one of the people who approved it. And now Mr. Shepherd has to come back and get approval again. It seems to me there ought to be some way to work around this. And I don't know if the staff has an explanation for why this has to be done in this way, but it seems terribly bureaucratic and expensive.
So if I may, I believe there's code that's written that says if you do not get a final, your permit expires, correct? And then the procedural requirement to reconstitute a permit is to go go through the same procedure again, is that correct? What would it, and this is what I'm getting to, what would it take to be able to say, to have it so that an applicant who has an expired permit can resubmit that permit without having to go through all the hoops and the fees? Would that be an action of the board of supervisors?
Would be a local coastal program then.
And a local coastal program, and then it sounds like it's going to be to our grandchildren?
Well, you would need, it's a process. There is going to be a needed cleanup to the Mendocino town plan at some point, so that could be something that gets taken into consideration at that time. But that's not currently on the books yet.
So we're compiling a laundry list of issues that might be addressed if we were ever to get to this point.
But the code as it reads right now has the 2-year expiration written into it.
With the procedural requirements go through all the hoops and fees again.
Essentially have to refile.
Okay. Would you please add this to your laundry list?
To your lawyers.
And let us know what we can do as a board to help expedite that before our grandkids graduate college. In some timely manner. Does that help? Anyone else comments? Thoughts?
Just that I both respect the decisions that have been made before and have no objections to the current status. I have an electric car, so I appreciate it existing. So I'd be willing to make a motion when we're ready to. I would move that we, see, what's the language that you need for this? That we approve the revised, or that we approve the permit?
Yes, approving HRB 2022-0010 with condition number 7 amended to remove.
The staining of the.
Yes.
As per memorandum dated February 6, 2023.
Yes, that.
That's that? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call,
All
please.
right, so we have a motion to approve the project with an amendment to condition number 7 and stating in staff memo that is seconded by board member Holm. Board member Roth, what is your vote?
Aye.
Board member Saunders.
Aye.
Board member Kapler.
Aye.
Board member Holm.
Aye.
And board member Madrigal.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
congratulations. And don't look, because you're at Sienna. Something similar. MHRD 20, agenda item number 9C, MHRD 2022-0011, no Shepherd. Historic Review Board permit for after the fact permission to install 3 electrical vehicle charging stations inside 2 wooden enclosures and install 5 mobile propane heaters from the ceiling of the Callan House porch. In addition, remove the upper story window on the Callan House barn and replace siding. Note the site is listed in the Mendocino Town Plan Appendix 1 as a Category 4A historic structure. The Callan House Apartments. Category 1 historic structure, the site of the Kelly Barn. Category 2A historic structure, Appleshed. Project site is at 45020 Albion Street. Planner Switzer. You're up.
Thank you, Chair Roth. Project Planner Steven Schweitzer here. Historical photographic evidence provides that the McCallum House Barn in the year range of 1898 to 1908 did not have an upper story window. Staff finds that the removal of the upper story window at the McCallum House Barn and the replacement of the siding to match the existing wooden siding was similar weather and color as well represented in shape and form. It is important to note that in 2018, the applicant previously secured an MHRB permit that expired in 2020 without vesting. Since that time, the applicant has constructed 2 wooden enclosures for the 3 electrical charging stations that were not mentioned in the 2018 MHRB permit. These unpermitted alterations minimize the impact of the equipment in the community and are in accordance with the other mechanical equipment section of the MHRB design guidelines. As for the 5 movable propane heaters with fixed gas pipes, this work has been unpermitted for over 10 years. Despite this, the work still requires MHRB approval and proper screening due to their location on the facade of the McCallum House. Staff is recommending that the review board consider granting after-the-fact approval contingent on proper screening of the heaters. Condition 8, contained in the staff report, ensures that the heaters will be properly screened. As detailed in the staff report, 3 recommended findings are provided, as well as 8 conditions of approval for review and consideration. The applicant has been provided a copy of the staff report and made aware of the conditions of approval. I am available for further questions.
But what brought this about now? Since it's been there for 10 years.
Right. Heaters.
Good question.
Yeah.
So this came to my table as a Mendocino town violation. So it's a code violation. A complaint was placed, and our code enforcement reached out to planning staff to determine consistency with the code, and I mean, it's just a complaint filed by the public.
Okay.
So.
And I apologize, I wasn't able to make the site visit today. But it does look, I drove by on my way here, it looks like there is a screen for one of them? Oh, is that what that is?
There's a mock.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
My question to you, which I voiced on our site visit, was, so if we can tease apart condition number 8, okay? Since we don't have a design here, is it that we're looking for an over-the-counter review and approval for the masking of these heating devices?
Yeah, so the intent with that condition language was for, the applicant to provide staff, some time to figure out either, confer with the review board on what the proper screening might look like, and, I can prepare a memo for MHRB approval. So, limiting the process of kind of what you touched on earlier with making the applicant secure another permit, whole scheduling process and the fees associated with that. So it would be kind of a little bit more of an over-counter process for this project.
And then a question for staff. I think it's more you guys. There are 3 sub-items on this one item. Is it correct that we have to take action on all 3 of those? We can't take action on one at a time? Meaning, if we're okay with the chargers in the window, we can approve that, but we can continue the heater part, we can't do that, can we? It's an all or nothing. So, I'll come back to that in a minute. So, thank you. Procedurally, we have Mr. Shepherd, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, okay, so back to the charging stations, I actually have a little bit more of a question about the fact that I was kind of hit on this, but I don't think I kind of elaborated enough. But when a permit, this may be directed to Julia, if you apply for a permit and you make substantial improvements and complete that permit, do you become vested in that, that permit being completed? Because I guess I conferred with my lawyer and also a previous planner, and they say if you apply for a permit, and the only reason I ask this is because I don't see that there's a problem with approval, but because of the substantial amount that a permit costs to reapply for, we're talking multi-thousands of dollars here for 2 permits, right? And because the fact that I already applied for it and installed it, is that a vested, are you vested in having that done? Because that's used in coastal development language, according to my lawyer.
It depends on the conditions related to your MHRB permit and whether or not it required that you have to get the final inspection before it expired, which it sounds like that was the case on these permits. But you're right, with a coastal development permit, there is this vesting provision where if you make substantial improvements, your permit can remain valid, but progress towards completion has to be continuous in order to remain valid.
Okay, well, I think that as board member Holmes talked about, it seems a little bit like there should be some changes in the plan to allow for some things like this. This was basically an oversight, that it didn't get finalized, and so that cost me approximately $4,000, give or take, which seems a little bit ridiculous, and it seems a waste of everybody's time. So I think there should be work towards correcting that. Obviously I should have had it, the permit final didn't happen. I got the application in. I completed the work. Feel like, maybe having to renew the building permit would be more appropriate of a penalty in this situation, rather than having to come back and waste everybody's time and energy on something that's obviously appropriate. As to the other part of the application, the heaters that are on the deck, I consider them, I remember when I put them in 10 or 12 years ago, I went to the building department and spoke with the planner, and we discussed it at length, whether this would really require, I can't remember the planner, may have been Rick Miller, who it may have been Teresa Spade, I can't remember who at the time, but we talked about the method of attachment. Is this a permanent or non-permanent part of this structure? And we determined that if it was, had a plug and a quick disconnect on the gas, it was not really a permanent, kind of application, a permanent alteration to the structure. That it could be removed like any deck heater or anything else. So I cannot, based on that direction that I got from the building department at the time. Now there's been a change in, the people that work there. So you get one good set of advice at one time, and then, it's open to interpretation, obviously. But I felt like, okay, these do not alter the building permanently. It can be, I can personally go up there in a few minutes, unplug those and pull them down, take them away. The building looks the same. So the idea that was presented by Stevens for like shielding them, I think is probably a pretty good idea. It definitely minimizes the visual impact from the street for these heaters. However, I feel it also would permanently alter the structure more than just having them be something that's like a deck heater or a car parked in front of the historic building. I'm not altering this building permanently. It can be removed. So I don't think, I actually checked with the manufacturers of the heaters because they are right now next to a combustible surface. They have to be dropped down to about 24 inches. If I were to put a little shield on them, I could raise them up so that they weren't sticking down as far. This angle doesn't show it very well, but from the front of the building, they stick down, and you can see them from the street. Huh?
Top photo.
Oh, yeah, right here, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Right here. So I put a little shield up here to demonstrate that we saw at the site view, that, you could kind of shield it here. So I was proposing that possibly we would shield this and then have another one that comes around and shields the rest of the heaters. I could raise them up to within the 8 inches of the, the combustible surface. But I also feel like I would be willing to do that if that's what it takes to keep the heaters on the porch, because it's very hard to be a viable business to have people out this Mendocino cold weather, being able to sit on our porch. That's where we serve our food. So I would like to keep the heaters. They've been there for a long time. I put them in there, under the, kind of direction of the building department. Now it was a complaint, so obviously it's come up. I want to, figure out how to resolve this issue. But I think my preference would be not to build anything permanent on the building. So with that said, I'll move on to the removal of this window. We do, originally, there was no window there. At some point that was leaking, and it was probably within the last 5 years, we sided over that window, and we have a picture from what I think this you presented, that was like from the turn of the century, where there's no window in there. So I think it actually goes back to being a more historic look for the building. Thanks.
Thank you. Have we had any correspondence on this item, written comments or phone calls today? Thank you. This is the time we're going to open up public expression. I think you guys all get it by now. So, podium, 3 minutes. Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, we're closing public comment. Bring it back to board comments, thoughts.
I appreciate that, but I do think, and I'm a, full disclosure, I'm a patron. I really enjoy having heat when I eat there, but it is, as much as they're temporary, they've been there for a long time, so it seems like it's worthwhile to improve the front facade of it with the screens. I mean, I would think that you could potentially build a shield that would be removable if the heaters ever went away. So yeah, I would support the application with screens to be done, even if it's in an over-the-counter thing, if to staff satisfaction. If they're visually screened from the street.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just question whether the screening will look better or worse, kind of like the applicant said. Like the way they are now is just kind of the raw thing, just a heater attached to an historical building. When you start adding woodwork, then that's going to start looking like you altered the building itself. I don't really know that it's going to give you much in terms of a better look than just the heaters themselves. They just look like heaters. So I can support it just the way it is right now.
Thank you. Alan, Paul?
I guess I'm not quite clear where the applicant was in terms of what he wanted to do with the heater. Would you prefer to unplug them and put standalone heaters on there? Is that, no? Okay, that's what I want, that's what
I can clarify, no. I would rather leave those heaters there. I'm willing to do a shield if that's what the board directs. I would like to keep them. I just wanted to explain that my intention was that they're removable, but I'm willing to put a, try to raise them up, put a metal shield so they can be actually closer to the ceiling, and put like a wooden enclosure around them so that it minimizes their visual impact. I'm willing to do either way as the board sees fit.
All right, thank you. Paul?
I guess the never bothered, the heaters have never bothered me, so I can accept the heaters the way they are without being shielded.
Really, you know, because I think aesthetically, the shield almost disappears, like the sort of mock-up. Like when you look at it from the street, it's the same color as the surrounding. Whereas, you don't think those stick out visually?
They've stuck out for 15 years.
But I mean, we're supposed to be
If it's there
talking
long
about
enough, it's
the,
gonna become historic.
that is the historical character of the.
Okay, can I come on this part?
I can go with the shield too, so I'm flexible on that one.
So first I want to say, yes, we are, hopefully you heard, it's silly to have to go through the same thing over and over again. And I think we all agree with that. We're going to try to change it, so thank you for being a guinea pig for that, putting up with this. So, the windows fine on my case, the charging stations are great, I love the way they blend in, you can't even tell they're there. The heater thing, I know that staff has asked for the 4 years I've been on the board that they don't want to be doing subjective decision making. They rather have guidelines, and I don't feel comfortable with go ahead and present something to staff and they'll figure it out, because that's our job. I think it's one way of responsibility. Like I said, I wish we could just go ahead and dispense with the window and the charging stations and focus on the heaters. What I'd like to see is something that's not thrown up to look at, but I think there's some great ideas in terms of raising them and shielding them, but I'd really like to see what that looks like. So my feeling is the heaters are the only thing standing out. I think if they're there for the next 15, 20 years, they could become historic. But in the spot that we're in, I think we have some different opinions, and I don't feel comfortable approving the whole application without knowing how this is going to turn out, because that's a delegation of our responsibility. So I'm more inclined to continue the application to get a firm design, a proposal to us as to how it's going to be dealt with. I just feel like it's too fluid right now.
Well, how do you feel about just leaving the heaters the way they are, and just approving the application without changing the heaters?
Yeah.
So that we.
I know,
Chair, if I may.
yes.
Would you like me to read in the condition language of condition 8? I think it kind of addresses some of your concerns. So the applicant wouldn't be needing to secure a new MHRB permit for this, but they will be coming before the board for approval of the staff memo. So the condition language reads, prior to the building permit issuance, the applicant shall submit for review and approval by staff memo to the MHRB review board a set of revised project plans effectively screening 5 movable propane heaters from the ceiling of the townhouse porch for public view. So I would like to note, screening could be a multitude of the things that we've mentioned here, whether that be, raising the heaters a few inches, if that includes, a wooden, some lattice type, visual shield from the street view painted to the structure, but this will be, as condition language 8 states, coming before the review board at a later date.
So you're saying they have to do final, they have to be final again?
So this is kind of what I was asking earlier. Is this a partial approval?
I don't believe it's a partial approval. I mean, what it's doing is
It's
providing
approving with the condition that it come back to us again.
that the applicant has time to refine the design and allow the review board to review that design via a staff memo under matters from staff.
Within the 2-year period.
Yeah.
So it's de facto a partial approval.
Just trying to give a workaround to allow for the review board.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, I'm comfortable with the way it is. It sounds like we can get the chargers off the table, get the window off the table, and staff will bring back the revised project plans. I'm totally okay with that. Do you have any other?
So you guys want to try?
I don't know. I want to see a design solution before I say yes or no. And then if the design solution is just
You're
leave it
saying
as is.
we're going to come back to this at the next meeting?
The conditions are that prior to the permit issuance, the applicant will submit for review and approval by staff and memo to us a set of revised project plans, effectively screening the 5 propane heaters from the ceiling. So basically, it's, we're giving you the approval to move forward on a design to deal with the heaters.
I would support that, and I just want to say, the way these agendas go is that, like, we had nothing under the consent calendar. And if something was on the consent calendar that warranted more discussion, you could always pull it off the consent calendar. I'm just wondering if there would be potential that, like, if staff is happy with it, put it on consent, and then if someone's like, oh no, I definitely don't like this, then it could get pulled.
So
But then that way,
procedure.
if there was no
issue.
by any of the board members or the public, it could go on consent.
Am I hearing a motion to approve and to move that to consent item when it comes back?
Yes. With understanding that condition 8 will be second again. So I appreciate your.
As a consent item to begin with.
If it seems appropriate, yes.
Sure, Rob. Yeah, so that staff memo would be falling under consent items anyway, just for review board, so that kind of addresses Vice Chair Bill's issue, so.
So yes, I move staff's recommendation.
If I may, staff would, in writing this condition, it would be helpful to staff to have some examples of the type of screening that you would like to see come back. It can be more than one example, but something so that the applicant has a direction to head towards. So we're not bringing something back that you're less satisfied.
I sort of see it as 2 things, and one would be to just leave it as is. And the second would be to recess it and provide some sort of screening.
What kind of screening, I think is the question, because lath was brought up, that's not usually historical. A board attached to the ceiling, kind of like a floppy soffit board.
Yeah.
Is that a solution that we want to see, an 8-inch board hanging down from the ceiling?
That's what I would like to see.
What do we want to see?
I think the appropriate design solution would be that you look at it and it doesn't appear modified. It doesn't look like you're trying to get away with something. It blends in. You would take the lead from other elements of architecture within the village.
Almost like a soffit, but one-sided. It
Well,
only needs to be visual.
So you want to see almost like a freeze board?
Here, no, that's an idea. It would probably not be one-sided. In order for it to be kind of like have structural integrity, it would probably be, if you can get the money, kind of clarifying right here. Yeah, you weren't at the site view, but there's, right here, it would probably be one that would have a 90 degree, so it would be like, yeah, you know, a U-shaped going around this heater. And there would be a long one that would wrap around the whole deck and turn the corner, because there's another heater around the corner. And it probably would be more than 8 inches, because it's probably going to be, 8 inches of clearance from, after you raise it up, because I put a shield in there, and then the heater is probably another 10 inches. So it would be like 18 to 20 inches deep. The one that the mock-up we had was more like 24 inches. So it would go up significantly, but we still hang down below this woodwork, so we can see it hanging down there. And I can make it so it was, removable, I guess, and we screwed it in there. And,
Could we just raise it up and have a shield, but no face coverage? And I think if we raised it up, we might get it out of the sightline.
It would have to have a metal shield.
What's that? Have a metal shield, not on top.
Yes.
So the metal shield could basically blend into the heater, and then it would be raised up so that the existing porch soffit would be closer to the height of that. Because my concern is that attaching a whole other soffit behind the soffit is just actually not going to look better. It's just going to be more wood coming down into the plane, and it's not going to look historically like it's not serving any function other than it's like a shield in the middle of what's a pretty nice porch right now. If you look over the heater, you see the porch soffit, and it all looks, there's air space around the heater. I think that's a nicer, cleaner look than cluttering that up with a bunch of wood. So maybe we could just, I would suggest maybe we just raise it up and add steel shield on top and leave the open there. But if we have a motion to go with this somewhat ambiguous direction.
Or maybe provide us two different mock-ups. One will be raised
Raise
with,
it in front of the screen.
yeah, raised it without a screen, raised it with a screen. And that way at least we have a couple options on the table. I think we all want to get you on.
Yeah, no, I see that you're trying to work with me, I see that we're going towards approval, so what is the approval? I'm willing to do whatever, obviously it's hard to design on the fly here, so if you want me to come back, that's fine. I can come back with a couple options.
You guys want that?
I need a second.
So basically, I think Polly offered a motion to approve with the number 8 condition to come back to us. Is there a second? Roll call, please.
All right, thank you. We have a motion by Board Member Madrigal to approve with the conditions as recommended in the staff report. And it's seconded by Board Member Saunders. Board Member Roth, what is your vote?
Aye.
Board Member Fong.
Yes.
Board Member Kapler.
All right.
Board Member Saunders.
Aye.
And Board Member Madrigal. Yes. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to go to agenda item 9D, our regular calendar, MHRD application 2022-0016. Richie, is there any board member that feels like they have conflict of interest and needs to recuse themselves?
I'm going to recuse myself from this job.
Thank you. And we'll let you know when we finish with the item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Move back to your water meeting.
This other meeting.
All right. We have the door closed, please. Thank you. So this is a Mendocino Historical Review Board permit to demolish and replace the existing eastern workshop. In addition, demolition and replace the roof throughout the north section of the structure to include overhangs. New exterior lighting is proposed, painted horizontal wood siding and roofing material are to match the existing residence. Note the site is listed as a Category 1 historic resource in Appendix 1 of the Mendocino Town Plan, Maxwell Jarvis House, 1878. And the project site is located at 45164 Little Lake Street. Planner Schweitzer.
Hello again. Thank you. As detailed in the staff report, the applicant is requesting to demolish and replace the existing eastern workshop, together with replacing the roof throughout the northern section of the structure, with overhangs to provide an overall continuity to the subject structure. Architectural plans indicate that the structure will retain the existing footprint and utilize painted wood siding. This responsive approach for utilizing features of the dilapidated eastern workshop provides that the proposed structure will not necessarily damage or destroy a structure of historical, architectural, or cultural significance. An analysis of the regulations for the subject parcel's Mendocino multiple family residential zoning district is contained in the staff report. The proposed work will still comply with the lot coverage and existing setbacks. Staff is recommending that the review board consider approval contingent on the recommended findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report. The applicant has been provided the staff report and made aware of these conditions of approval. I am available for further questions.
Thank you. All right. We have the applicant present. Please approach and give us your name.
Sunny Chancellor. Yeah, so the proposal is only dealing with the northern section of the building, no changes are proposed to the original historical front portion of the building. Reworking the foundation, it's all open with the lattice work at the backside. We're going to be enclosing the entire understory and reworking the foundation as well as replacing all of the roofing as was noted. Trying to maintain as much of the remaining windows in the positions and sizes and replacing rod as necessary to refurbish the building. Not much to say beyond that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any correspondence or telephone calls that have been received related to this item?
To date, no.
Thank you. And now we open it to the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close it. Board members, thoughts, questions, concerns?
No, no concerns. I think although the building is not visible from the road, it certainly would be an improvement to the property without sort of removing any of its historical significance. So I'm for it.
Do we have any information as to how old the additions that we're talking about here are?
Scott?
Yes, to address it, I couldn't find any date on that, kind of that northern section, what contains the proposed kitchen. Based on, from our side view, it does look like it's a little bit more modern construction from the, the Maxwell Jarvis house itself. So, I mean, it's kind of speculative to say the actual date here, but I would go confidently with that it's not, from the historical.
So there were no building permits or anything like that for
I
these additions?
checked the address file, I was unable to find anything, so.
I might offer, some of the windows in that northern section are aluminum frame and they look like they're probably from the 70s or so.
Okay.
I'm supportive. We got this neat historical photo in our packet, and I have to say there's 7 water towers just in that block. There anymore. But no, I'm supportive of the, all the windmills on them, actually. I'm supportive of the application.
Right. I think it's nice that we're keeping the harmony in the building, making it look a little nicer and bringing it up to the current construction with the real foundation. So I think we're helping to preserve the main house by preserving the side structures. So I think it's in harmony. It's not a visually huge difference, and it's very secluded. It's not very visible. So and it is within harmony. So I'm full support of it as well.
Okay.
Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve MHRB permit 2022-0016, subject to the findings and conditions set out in the staff report.
Have a second?
I've done a bunch of them.
All right, I'll second it. I do.
We have a first and a second. Staff?
All right, so we have a motion by Kepler to approve the project with the conditions as recommended in the staff report, seconded by Saunders. What is your vote, Board Member Roth?
Aye.
And your vote, Board Member Madrigal?
Aye.
Your vote, Board Member Saunders?
Aye.
And Board Member Kepler?
Aye.
So the motion passes 4-0 with Mr. Ong refusing.
Great, thank you. And can someone let Mr. On back in?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure where Board Member Ong is. He seems to be outside.
Is it a short break?
I'm wondering, it's probably a stone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was discussing that I've got leadership in this
So,
and we're doing
we're
a
going
mock
to,
supervisor.
the project
Oh,
doesn't feel
excellent.
issue,
The
an
issue
editor
there too.
is before we issue a building permit for the meters
Oh, boy.
or the electrical outlets.
It goes to the board on
associated with
February
it.
28th.
They'll need
Yes,
to
so
come
this is
back
gonna
with
be
a
the
design
design
that staff and the board would
Yeah.
support.
And
And it's not going to come to the board
Good. Okay,
and
great.
present it.
I think
For
I'm
the
gonna come
board
up with
to
some,
approve.
like, new.
And then,
about
with
this
that
is
approval, we
this.
can
Yeah.
issue the building.
And then I'm going to,
Okay.
the class is not that big this year.
So ideally, I
Yeah.
some item that could be pulled, I mean, it was, you know, a little curious on our end.
State Street.
And then,
One of the
Well, there's
projects.
one that's
Physical violations on the
One of our
project.
districts is
Very slow.
I like
Planning
it a
to
lot.
see.
We're trying to build in some flexibility.
Yeah, so I'm trying to format.
You know, like the design permits was trying to.
I should remove them, and then of course
We're gonna
they
be
can
talking
do
about
what
it.
they
Yeah.
want. But I'm gonna have like a,
So is there a magnet here?
It's, you know,
I have glasses just like that and I love them.
we did our best.
It works.
Yeah, I use them,
Good.
Release day.
1.75 on mine.
Chair says back to order.
Okay.
I know there's at least 4 people need to drive you kind of
If
night.
you have any good things I should add to it, let me know.
Reading.
My mom,
Many
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And then also
Okay, well.
talk about an important component of.
Well, you get the pleasure of aging.
Oh, thank you.
We can actually result sometimes in
Pleasure of aging.
more affordable
Been around for a while.
accommodations.
I'm thinking maybe a local.
Pleasure of aging.
Uh-huh.
Pleasure of aging.
All right, welcome back. Let's get this done. Almost there, come down the stretch. Agenda item number 10, any matters from the board members. So, do any of you have any topics you want to bring up or directions to divide this out at this time?
Yeah, so I had members of the public who were here earlier, reach out about the sign thing. So I'm certainly interested in, working with the public to try to come up with some recommendations for streamlining. I know we talked about it not that long ago, but, I
So,
just want to say that I've heard from the public. Yes.
okay. Can I show my hand on this? So we have, Ishri has a couple of issues that he's wanted to discuss.
Right.
So we're agendizing under this matters from the board for the March meeting. 3 different topics that he wanted to bring forward. One is signage, one is windows, and one is paint. Is that right?
Right. I think one we're doing as matters with staff and the other one we're letting him build consensus with other board members.
So, those would be will be on the agenda, and if there are 2 members who want to create a subcommittee and hold a discussion and bring it back to the full board.
If I may interrupt for just a moment, I'd like to make note for the record that a board member hasn't returned after recusing himself.
Yes, please. So we've been re-adjourned with our 4 board members. Thank you.
And then lastly, I've already said anecdotally that my brain capacity drastically reduces after 10 o'clock. So I didn't want to bring this up for today's, but it was in the minutes that we were hoping to acknowledge the winners of the Historical Preservation Award, and then once we met in person, we would do that again. So I was just saying that sounds good.
We're on your same page.
Okay.
In April is the month where we usually make those recognitions, so we have it in practice. We're moving to recognize the 2 recipients that we have. So we do it every other year. So in our April meeting, we'll have a presentation to the recipients who won, awardees who won when we were in COVID, and a presentation in April.
Great.
Thank you for staying on it.
If I could respond to some of the board discussion regarding signs, I'd like to say that staff is working very hard to work with more flexibility in the sign permit process. But we have historically been issuing sign permits since 1975, and the conditions have really been rather the same up until about a year ago. So one of the conditions is when the business ceases operating, the sign is no longer So if we have an existing business that has a sign that is more than, say, 5 years old, it most likely has that condition, and we can't waive those conditions. What we can do is, as we look at new sign permits that come in, we can build in the flexibility that we talked about. So, let's say,
And I have to say, I'm happy to have this conversation
Yeah.
later, because we're gonna have to have it all again.
right. So if shopkeeper A got a sign in 1980 and they close their business and leave, and a new shopkeeper comes in and wants to do a different business, they can't do a change of copy sign because this 1980s shopkeeper business is ceased. Their sign permit is no longer valid. They, under
That was the case up until like a year ago?
Right, a couple of years ago. So we've been working to put flexibility into sign permits, but they're in the newer sign permits. The older sign permits still have the very conventional use since 1975 conditions in them.
So you can't retrofit an old permit with the new permit regulations.
Because it doesn't have those conditions. Yeah, but we're delighted to work on putting that flexibility into new signs, and we're working together with staff to do that, and we're eager to hear from the review board about more.
And that for either of you gentlemen?
No.
Okay. So let's bring to agenda item number 11A, matters from staff. Case MHRB 2022-0016, Ritchie. Is there any board member that needs to recuse themselves for all?
I thought that anyone needs to recuse themselves.
Yeah.
Will you just write, right where the F is?
I'm sorry. This is, I'm sorry, you're right. No, I'm bad. It was mismarked here, so we're actually 2022-016. This is Catherine.
Yeah.
Okay.
This has been great.
Yes.
Sold.
Got it. Okay.
Or at the solar panels.
Yes, solar panels.
Okay.
I messed up, my bad.
Okay.
Just reading the record, review board member home, now back in 9:20.
I don't know if you want to go back to agenda item 10A to accommodate board member Holm, who's just returned.
We can do that. Should we have 10A was matters from the board? So that things that you want to bring up? Holly brought up that she wanted to talk about signs. We had a short discussion of that.
I thought those were all being put on the meeting agenda for next week.
There, that's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I told them.
Okay.
That we're gonna, we have three different items that we're gonna go over, and that's one.
Okay.
Anything else beyond that?
No, we're gonna tackle that next month, that's great.
All right. All right.
So,
Madam Chair, please.
sure, this is agenda item 11A, an opportunity to confer with a property owner about installing roof-mounted solar at
45280 Cobble Street.
Yeah, 45280 Covelo Street. We did a site view earlier today. I'm sorry we don't have any exhibits on the board, but basically on the west gable, they are proposing to put solar panels and not alter the roof otherwise, and they would be in plane with the roof. They would be black in color. And also the contractor is here if you have questions or would like to give some guidance and confer with them about the proposal to install roof-mounted solar.
Thank you. This is Mr. Lord.
Oh, no, I'm Bruce Erickson from Mendocino Solar Service.
If you would, please.
Do you have questions or?
Anything you want to add to what was just said?
It's pretty straightforward. There's no material here. I contacted TSR today to see whether I need to bring anything. Looks like you have a photograph there of the the roof layout. And, just a working out spec sheet. Yeah, basic road, 2 rows of 9 panels on the west facing hip roof.
I apologize, I didn't get this one. And I wasn't able to do what directional orientation? Is this?
That's west facing.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think this was in our packet, just FYI.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the packet either. I apologize. I'll work with staff on that. It was available online, so perhaps you got it offline. I'd like to just add that this home is located north of the Mendocino Arts Center. So it's on that part of Covelo Street that isn't so frequently traveled,
Not super visible.
and, yeah.
And full of models.
Yes.
And I just want to clarify for the public that we can advise on solar installation, but we cannot say that there's solar.
Right.
It's not approval or denial, it's just
Right, so,
advisory.
yeah.
The only advice I can give on solar is to try to keep the conduits going like through a roof penetration and not
Yes.
bringing them down over the eave and around the
Yes,
fascia.
that's what
That
we'll be doing, putting the roof penetration underneath the panels into the attic so it won't be visible and then coming out the other side of the building right above the meter panels that will be connected to. So that there won't be anything visible other than the panels themselves.
Because where the conduits cross the fascia, so.
Yeah. See that a lot in photograph.
You see a lot everywhere.
All right, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stick around, I know it's a little past 8 o'clock, but you can stick around if there are any questions, we'll be back soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see.
We don't take a motion on that.
No, but we procedurally go through things. So correspondence or telephone calls on that?
No.
Okay. Opening it to the public hearing, anyone have any comments? Dedicated people. Love you guys. Any questions for board members?
I'm a little concerned, and I don't know what to do about it, about the fact that the one house that overlooks, that we seem to have trouble getting a clear ownership answer about what's there. I don't know what to do about that, and I'm a little concerned that later somebody may call up and say, wait a minute, you know, I'm overlooking the solar panels, I don't like it. Not what you can do about it anyway, but I don't know where you guys are on that in terms of getting hold of the owners.
Right, so it's a building permit application. It's not a public hearing item. The agenda has been posted in 2 locations in town. The whole packet has been posted at the library and at the community center here. I believe there's also a notice in the newspaper, so this would have been included in those kinds of noticing. We also put a notice at the property, which wasn't a requirement, but we did do that.
Okay.
So there has been plenty of notice given.
And specifically to the property too, which is.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know what else you can do, but, you know.
Right, so your
This is
concern
what I
is that there's a tenant in the building and the property owner is not on site. So the property owner might not have gotten a written notice or might not even live here in town.
I just want to get on the record that the effort has been made. in that
Yes.
building. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it's not a historic house, and the solar panels are facing west, they're not facing the street, so I don't really have a problem.
Yes.
I just want to make a comment that the property owner does live in the house.
Right, the neighboring one.
You were doing
Oh,
the
yeah,
neighbor.
neighbor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, as Paul said, it's not visible, it's sometime back in the solar, so. I think we're pretty much done on that one.
Yes, sure.
All right. Since I was in our agenda, it is number 12, adjournment. So as of 9:26, we are adjourned. And we will see